Welcome to the deep dive. If you're like most people, well, you've probably experienced chronic physical pain, maybe emotional distress, that feeling like your body is just locked into a pattern you can't seem to break.
Yeah, it's incredibly common.
So today our mission really is to deliver a kind of unlock key. We're merging some surprising facts about your nervous system with ancient wisdom and deep intuition.
Exactly. We're peeling back the layers on an interview with this really specialized healer, Gloria Hester. She has this incredibly unique practice, works seamlessly with both people and, interestingly, horses.
Horses too, okay?
Yeah. Her approach is very multimodal. It combines, everything from somatics to energy work. The goal for you, the listener, is to understand the mechanics of how re-educating your nervous system can, well, restore your personal autonomy and fundamentally relieve suffering.
And even before we get into the specific methods, her origin story, it's kind of the ultimate proof that this knowledge isn't always learned in a book, right? Sometimes it's just innate. She realized much later in life that as a child, gosh, she was only 7, 8, maybe 9 years old, she was instinctively teaching her great-grandfather this complex guided relaxation technique.
It's pretty remarkable. She now identifies this technique as yoga nidra, the systematic rotation of consciousness through the body.
Wow.
Her great-grandfather had excruciating pain from severe spinal arthritis, and he'd keep asking her to do that thing, the thing that brought him relief. And remember, she grew up on a farm, rural Alabama, zero formal training.
No context for it at all.
None. Yet she was delivering this profound pain-alleviating modality. It just highlights this, universal intuitive connection to healing that, honestly, many of us just lose touch with.
That really sets the stage perfectly. So she grows up, moves into adulthood, finds herself in New York City. She described it as a place of just absolute polarity. The extremes of supermodels, glamour, wealth, right alongside intense, suffering, homeless people, those overworked, elderly carriage horses. That stark emotional contrast, it just reinforced her childhood drive to alleviate pain. It focused her path onto the nervous system.
And that focus led her straight to the core of her main modality, somatics. Specifically, Hannah somatics, taught by Ellen Prusana.
Okay, somatics.
And it's really crucial to get this distinction. Somatics is fundamentally different from, say, a mechanistic approach, like just stretching a muscle.
Right, it's not just about pulling on things.
Exactly. It's not about forcing a muscle to lengthen. It's about using the sensory and motor systems, that communication loop between the muscle and the brain, to essentially re-educate the control center.
So it's like talking to the brain to get the muscle to change, not forcing the muscle itself.
You got it. Re-education, not brute force. And the foundational concept she works with here is tonicity.
Tonicity. That sounds a bit technical. What does that actually feel like for, the average person?
Right. So tonicity, in this context, it's simply excess involuntary tension that's held constantly in a muscle, even when you think you're resting. Right. Imagine that low-level brace, the way your shoulders might hunch up when you're stressed out. That sustained shortening contraction is tonicity.
Oh, okay.
The muscle fibers are literally being told by the brain to stay shortened. Often it's an unconscious, just habitual response to accumulated stress or maybe past trauma. That's why you can feel perpetually tight, even right after a deep massage.
That makes sense. It's like the brain keeps sending the tighten up signal, like a silent, involuntary prism for the body almost.
That's a good way to put it.
And the proof of how interconnected the body is and the intelligence of this system?
Well, there's this almost miraculous story she shared about a client who'd lost vision in one eye for 25 years after a car accident.
Yeah, this one's pretty stunning. And here's the kicker. The healer, Gloria, didn't even know about the vision loss.
Seriously. The client just came in to address severe chronic tension she was holding in her shoulders. That's it. By working somatically, just releasing the excess tonicity in those shoulder girdle muscles, the release somehow traveled. It reached contracted muscles way up in her skull.
Wait, hold on. 25 years of functional blindness, fixed by working only on shoulder tension. I mean, that sounds almost impossible. For someone listening who's skeptical, what's the proposed mechanism there?
Okay, so the mechanism hinges on that deep, widespread muscle contraction pattern, the one dictated by the brain. Chronic involuntary tension creates these deep muscular contractions that pull on fascia, connective tissue, often far from the original injury site.
Probably like a chain reaction.
Exactly. In this case, the thinking is that the somatic release allowed those contracted muscles in the skull to finally let go. This relieved pressure, potentially on the optic nerve, the woman called the next day just completely stunned because her vision had suddenly returned. After 2.5 decades, it just emphasizes how radically interconnected the body's map is, and that the brain holds the blueprint for both the pain and the healing.
That story really underscores this idea that physical pain is so often rooted in these unconscious mental and emotional patterns. When we feel we need to protect ourselves, could be anxiety over a meeting, could be old trauma, our bodies just instinctively pull into protective reflexes, like the startle reflex or the cringe reflex.
The brace.
And we start living in that state of contraction.
Exactly. And those involuntary contractions, they just accumulate over a lifetime. This accumulation can manifest later on as what the healer called the posture of senility.
Posture of senility. You mean like this stooped posture we associate with old age?
Precisely. The limited mobility, the stiffness we typically associate with getting older, the suggestion is that it's often, in large part, a functional problem. It's caused by these accumulated contractions stored in the lower parts of the brain, not solely a structural breakdown because of age.
That's a paradigm shift. So it's less about joints wearing out and more about the brain holding on to tension patterns for decades.
That's the idea. It's accumulated function, or dysfunction, really.
Okay, this focus on the brain as the kind of central manufacturer of pain brings us right into the really revolutionary work of Dr. John Sarno, especially his classic book, Mind Over Back Pain.
Oh, yeah. Sarno's theory is extremely disruptive, especially to conventional medicine. He basically proposed that the brain sometimes contracts muscles violently, robs them of oxygen, traps acid, creating this searing, debilitating pain. He called it tension myositis syndrome, or TMS.
Okay, but why would the brain do that to us?
That's the core of it, to create a massive physical distraction, a distraction from suppressed unconscious emotional material that the brain decided maybe long ago was just too dangerous or overwhelming to consciously acknowledge.
So the back pain, or whatever pain, is like a smokescreen for emotional stuff.
That was his theory. And the most stunning part is Sarno's reported success rate, something like 85%.
85%, just from understanding the mechanism.
That suggests that often awareness alone, just consciously understanding that the brain is manufacturing this pain as a distraction, realizing the pain is functional, not structural damage, can be enough to resolve it.
That's incredible. It gives the person back control, doesn't it?
It grants autonomy. Just knowing the pain mechanism is driven by the mind gives you the power to challenge the pattern, to tell your brain essentially, okay, I see what you're doing, and I'm not afraid of that suppressed stuff anymore. This concept of regaining inner control is vital. And the sources connect this to psychology, too, noting that people who are, say, highly analytical, always trying to control others, they're often struggling precisely because they lack that inner control. They substitute external control for internal mastery.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so if our internal landscape, our brain and emotions, is responsible for so much of our physical structure and pain, what about external forces? Let's zoom out. Specifically, let's talk about light, referencing work from people like Dr. Jack Kruse.
Right. We often forget light is a nutrient. It's absolutely integral to setting our entire circadian rhythm, our nervous system function.
And the big problem today is
artificial light, particularly blue light. It's pervasive, right? Every screen, every device. Blue light stimulates the nervous system. It causes an excitatory response in the muscle spindle fibers.
Wait, those are the same fibers involved in tonicity, right? The tension thing.
Exactly the same ones. So effectively, staring at blue light, especially at night, is like telling your body, stress, stay alert, contract. You're actively increasing that background tension.
Okay, so if that stressor is literally everywhere, how do we practically counterbalance it? She offered some key tips that feel pretty accessible. First one, get first morning light directly in your eyes.
Yes, crucial. That red light spectrum, dominant early in the morning, acts like free healing, as she put it. It penetrates incredibly deep into the body, maybe up to 11 inches, helps reset your hormonal clock without causing damage, like later-day UV might.
So just stepping outside for, what, 10 minutes at sunrise?
Can be revolutionary for regulating sleep and stress. Simple, but profound.
Okay. And when you are getting that important full-spectrum sunlight exposure later in the day, she said focus on two specific areas, exposing your abdomen and your calf muscles.
Yeah.
Why those spots?
Right. Apparently, these areas have a dramatically higher density of receptor sites for light. They're key for overall bodily function, vitamin D absorption, things like that.
It's interesting.
And crucially, the sources strongly recommend avoiding sunglasses and sunscreen during these meaningful exposure periods.
Really? No sunglasses or sunscreen. That goes against a lot of standard advice.
It does. But the reasoning is the eye needs to read the full spectrum of light to properly set off the hormone cascade that regulates your entire circadian rhythm, your whole day-night cycle. Blocking that spectrum with dark lenses or chemicals prevents the body from accurately reading the light environment it needs to function optimally.
Okay, so the eyes are like light meters for the whole body's clock.
In a way, yes. And this isn't just theory. She mentioned Dr. John Ott's studies, kind of buried now, but they showed when kids in schools were moved from fluorescent light environments to full spectrum natural light.
What happened?
They calmed down, concentration went up, fighting behaviors dropped significantly. It shows how directly light impacts the sympathetic nervous system and behavior.
Wow. So light is a direct input influencing our stress state and even how we act.
Absolutely. And tying this back to the brain, poor light habits can exacerbate hemispheric imbalance. We need that analytical, data-driven left brain communicating fluidly with the intuitive, pattern-recognizing right brain. They connect via the corpus callosum. Think of it as the information superhighway between the two sides.
And that connection is often what's missing for someone who feels, I don't know, separated from their creative, intuitive self. Maybe someone who spent years focused purely on engineering logic, very left brain functions.
That's a classic example. They can get locked in a loop of needing data, control, dogma. They lose touch with that right brain input, that holistic view.
Okay, so to help bridge that gap, to facilitate that balance and move from just understanding this stuff to actively changing things, we need tools, somatic tools. She introduced a really practical technique, tapping, or emotional freedom technique, EFT.
Right. EFT works off the meridian system, similar principles to acupuncture, but without needles. Yeah. It aims to address specific limiting beliefs that get stored in the energetic body.
And what's fascinating about the tapping process is how it seems to mechanically force both brain hemispheres to engage at the same time, using these things called dual statements.
Yeah, it's quite clever, psychologically. You state the negative limiting belief out loud, something like, even though my whole life I've thought I wasn't enough. The left, logical brain hears that and acknowledges it as the current reality, the truth.
Okay.
But then you immediately follow it with an affirmation possibility of, maybe I am, or I deeply and completely accept myself anyway. This engages the right intuitive brain by affirming possibility. It breaks the purely logical loop of the negative belief.
And you do this while tapping on specific points on the body.
Exactly. You tap on specific meridian points, starting often with the side of the hand, the karate chop point, then maybe the crown of the head, inner eyebrow, outer eye, under the arm, collarbone, while repeating this dual phrase. You're physically moving energy while simultaneously resetting the mental program.
It's like rebooting the system on multiple levels.
Kind of, yeah. And this nonverbal communication, this energy reading, it works across species, too. She highlighted how profoundly honest animals are. They're like mirror neurons walking around.
Right. They didn't get the memo that we're supposed to be separate from nature.
Not at all. They read energy, body language, intention far more acutely than most humans do these days.
Which brings us to that amazing anecdote about the injured horse. This horse had an injured hip, but they couldn't even catch him because of a dominant herd mate.
Right. So the healer, Gloria, had to stand like half a football field away, couldn't physically touch the animal.
So what did she do?
From that incredible distance, she just worked with the horse's consciousness. Using her own visualization and somatic understanding, she essentially showed him, mentally, the possible directions of movement for his hips, offered him a new motor plan, energetically.
And the horse.
The horse's consciousness responded. He came out of the rigid pain pattern, started moving differently. The owner, just watching this happen from afar, was astonished. It's maybe the ultimate example of somatic feedback and energetic connection working beyond language.
That's truly remarkable. Okay, so we've covered movement of the body, movement of energy, the influence of light. But none of this works optimally if the body doesn't have the basic building blocks, right? The fuel.
Absolutely fundamental.
For the listener looking to optimize their body's input, she compiled this comprehensive resource. The book, Real Food for Real Bodies.
Yeah, and it's much more than just a cookbook. It provides what she calls logistical wisdom, explaining why certain fats or vinegars are chosen over others, for instance, and why they matter for overall health.
And it covers different eating styles.
Totally. Recipes cover everything from carnivorous to vegan. The whole focus is on promoting nutrient density and maximizing mineral intake.
Okay, minerals. Why are minerals so critical to these energy-based systems we've been discussing?
Because without sufficient minerals, think electrolytes like magnesium, potassium, sodium, your nervous system literally cannot transmit signals optimally.
The electrical system needs conductors.
Exactly. If you're mineral deficient, you slow down nerve communication, you impair muscle function, you compromise overall energy production, you simply can't execute the healthy, re-educated motor plan the brain just learned if the body lacks the raw materials to power the signal effectively.
Got it. Raw materials are essential. So the core philosophy running through this entire journey from somatics to light to belief work to nutrition seems to be about self-determination, agency.
That's it, precisely. It's summed up beautifully by a quote from the somatic pioneer Moshe Feldenkrais: "Know what you're doing, and then you can do what you want." It's fundamentally about regaining autonomy over your own life, your own health, your own nervous system.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive, we've really dissected the power of re-educating the brain's motor plan through somatics to release decades of chronic tension. We've looked at the pretty dramatic physical effects of light exposure, or lack thereof, on our stress levels.
And the very practical power of changing core limiting beliefs, using techniques like tapping, accessing that mind-body connection directly.
But the final, maybe most profound takeaway from these sources, especially when you consider how decentralized and highly personalized true healing really is, it seems to require one essential trait from the individual.
It really does. It requires courage.
Courage.
Yeah, it takes profound courage to think for yourself, to ask probing questions of authority, whether that's medical authority or any other kind, to really discern information critically in a world that's just flooded with data and dogma.
To trust your own experience, maybe.
Exactly. That act of courage to question, to explore, to trust your own inner knowing, that's the necessary starting point for letting go of those old contraction patterns, for regaining personal autonomy, and for achieving truly profound health and well-being. That act of self-trust, that's the first real step on the healing journey.